All right, so we get ahead, say managing your teams. We did all that. So here's what the book says. So these are things you need to know for your quiz questions. So the basic we're saying is how the management in coaching is the same pretty much any position you have. So you have a planning, you have organizing, staffing. How many coaches do you have under you, or directing and then controlling everything? So this book kind of splits it up into preseason, in-season, postseason. And they tried to make it as generic as it can be. So in your preseason, you're going to make sure your team policies are all updated from the last year. Usually there would be probably a meeting of all your coaches at the end of the season, and you'd be like, what things do we need to change for next year? This is when you would change your team policies, like are we going to make them wear ties when they come to games or not? Those kinds of things. I was pretty impressed. I went to Crane Park down in St. Helena, that way. And when I was driving by on a Friday afternoon, I saw whatever opposing football team show up. So there were 2 buses, and all these high schoolers start funneling out of the bus. All of them have black shirt, black pants, and a red tie on. I was like, okay, that's sharp. For a 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon for a Friday evening football game, I'm assuming. But those are the kind of policies that you'd be changing and writing them down, and then writing any new policies. You present those team policies in their handbook, so you'd be hopefully having a team handbook. That's one of your projects today. And then I very much, when the season's over, write down any incidents that you need to change something for. So, and they have kind of all the different pieces here, and we're going to go through all the different ones as we go. So you have your policy manager, your information. Oh, man, that's a fun one. We'll get into that. Personnel, so different staffing needs. Your institution, so that would be your principal, if you're a teacher and an athletic director, whoever you're working under, you got to work with them. Oh, man, planning events. So like an away game, making sure you have all the logistics. I would always have to talk to, and especially like here with even a larger institution, you have to talk to the maintenance people to make sure that the vans or the buses fueled and ready to go. You have to talk to the coaches. You have to talk to the ADs. You have to email. Oh man, this was a tough one for me to remember. The morning of a game, always email the other team or text them depending on how you communicate. And confirm the game and times. I messed that one up when I didn't realize that the boys were playing first and the girls were playing second. And I show up with the girls first, and they were like, oh, well, we sent the girls away. We can't start the game. I was like, school just got out. We were there an hour early. And so we had to wait until all their girls came back, and I had a very angry CEO of the hospital whose son played and had gotten off work to come to his game that wasn't happening on time. Woo, not the person you want to anger. So, and then someone said the facilities and all those kinds of things there. All right, so your information person is the one that has to plan, and oh man, this is the one I need the most help with. I would always try to find a parent that was really type A personality that can get things done and can put it all together, because I know it's one of my lower points in life. So having a plan for assessing and dissecting everything during the season, someone that has quick access to the information. One of the major informations you need to have is consent to treat forms. So having somebody, usually your office manager of the school, at least the little schools I've worked at, but if you're in like a club situation, you'd probably have a parent that would hopefully be in charge of this, because it's tough to do everything at one time. Other information would be scouting. Oh, I love scouting. I can watch games of other teams and dissect them down. Oh, so much fun. But who will you scout? What competitions? Do you have a scouting form? I do for basketball. I would always scout like the top 3 teams, and I would try to find like when are they playing each other. And as long as it wasn't the same night I was playing. So the two teams that were always tough at Lodi was Stockton Christian and, darn, I can remember, started with an L, Lois Hills, something like that. Anyways, they're both in Stockton, and I was always waiting for them because they would play Saturday night games. And so I always would find the game that they were playing on a Saturday night against them and go scout that game. And I'd always make sure we hid in a corner up on the top of the bleachers, let all the parents sit closer to their kids. And it was really fun for Missy and I would sit there and just start scouting them. She'd have one team, I'd have the other, and we'd just be dissecting it. It was so much fun. Tough one, publicity. What kind of publicity do you want? Do you get media coverage? Do you have announcers for your basketball games or your football games? I wish we had somebody be the announcer that would be like, Shamar Parker for 3 when they score. Would make it feel more like a college game to me. But I don't have the time to volunteer for that as much as I would enjoy that. And then after the season's over, having someone making sure that all the records are completed, submit to the right person. So communication is another information thing that you'd want to be. And we're better now. When I started playing in grade school, they had a phone tree. And so one person would call 2 people, the next 2 people would call 2 people, the next 2 people would call 2 people. And that's how they would get information to all the families. So you were either leaving a message on the phone, and you just knew when you got that message on your house phone or your cell phone that you had 2 people to call, because there was no easy way to email or text. Email was the next one before texting got big, and that would probably been high school for me. And by the time I got to coaching, we started texting. And so group texting used to be tough. I had to have separate ones if they had a limit of 10 people on a group text. That would be before iMessage was a thing. So you had to be really careful. So I had the parent group chat and the players group chat. And some parents didn't have phones at the time or didn't have a cell phone. So yeah, it was interesting. And then those 2, this is the stats program I use for my games. So you got your made shot, missed shot, and you'll click on each person. I don't usually have 2 full teams. I'll usually just do team stats for the other team, and I'll do individual stats for myself. But that's what that one looks like. Somebody's got to be the personnel manager. This one's probably the coach. So any support staff, probably you need at least 1 assistant coach per team. A manager would be nice. And we really need an athletic trainer at this college. I heard a really interesting thing that one of the students came up with in the management class was we need an athletic trainer that's there for all the games, but also could be in the weight room or the cardio room for training sessions for the general population. So you could schedule a athletic trainer time to work with them. And I was like, that's actually not a bad idea. That would probably actually help get more community members to come use our facilities if we had a trainer that they could, probably more like a personal trainer than an athletic trainer. But and I talked about the communications already. Ooh, who's keeping track of if people are eligible? I was told by my wife yesterday that apparently before on a game day, my players are supposed to check their grades on Canvas or whatever they use over there. And they're supposed to submit those to the principal or to the athletic director before every game. So if they have a D or have 2 Ds or an F, they can't participate. So it's whoa, okay. Making sure your athletes are eligible. Do your athletes and parents understand? And I was always a fan of a 2-week suspension from play on the first thing. So there wasn't, because it's really tough on the teachers. If a player gets, ineligible, all of a sudden the parents and the player are all over that teacher. You need to grade his stuff immediately so that he can play in the game tonight. No. If your grades drop below, a 2 Ds or an F, you're suspended from participating in games for 2 weeks. And that 2 weeks starts when you get your grades back up. And so every 2 weeks on Monday, we would have, it was actually better to do it on Wednesday during staff meeting. because that's also when the principal would say, we're going to make sure your grades are up to date. And their like academic senate or whatever committee would meet and go over grades. And then when it came to staff meeting that night, they would tell me, the athletic director, here's the people who are ineligible for the next 2 weeks. I'm like, okay. So it'd give the teachers a couple of days to grade things from the weekend. You always over communicate with other with your other staff, and I would say include that with like teachers. And then, are you the one monitoring their work? Are they the one monitoring their work? It's a lot easier now than it used to be with all the grade programs. And at the end of the season, is there a team meeting? Wasn't there an awards banquet or something last year? I remember seeing all the people walking on campus, all the athletes had ties on and were all fancied up for a banquet of some sort. Returning uniforms at the end of the year. So I have an interesting story about that. The school that I was at, the seniors had a thing for stealing their uniforms at the end of the year. Which, when you're in little Adventist schools, a set of 15 uniforms costs about $1,500. And that's for like home jersey, away jersey, home shorts, away shorts are about $25 a piece. 15 jerseys, so it's about $100 per player. And at the end of their senior year, they would try to just forget to turn their uniform in at the end of the year and try to take it with them. And it was even like facilitated a little bit because one of the families that purchased the uniforms, they purchased like 10 extra uniforms so that when their kids, because they had 3 kids, when they got through, they could steal their jersey at the end of the year. I didn't want to let that happen because I knew where it would go. So I talked to my principal, talked to the teachers, talked to the parents, and I was like, at the end of the season, they had to get like a test permit, and usually test permit was, you can take your test if your bill is paid. And I added into that, and your jerseys are returned. So I had this dude that he was a senior, and he wore number 35 all season long. And when it came to jersey day to turn them all in right before finals, he brings me the number 22 jersey. And I was like, that's wonderful. Now can I have your jersey? He's like, I gave it to you. I'm like, you wore number 35 all season, and the jersey you gave me was number 22. His mother came to me that afternoon and was livid. My son gave him our jersey. I was like, he gave me the wrong number. He probably stole it because he was a bigger guy. He probably didn't turn it in 2 years ago. As it was a culture of, I steal my jersey at the end of the year. And it was a tough one to get around because the office did not give him his jersey until he brought it in. He threw it at me when he came in. He's graduating in 2 days or 3 days or something like that. Comes in and he throws it at me in the office. I was like, you want to get suspended and not be able to graduate? And he just walked off. And there's really not much you can do when they've already taken their test and all they get to do is march. So, yeah, very interesting. Just have a plan, and that's one of those things that are like, all right, so next year in their team handbook, we need to be upfront about this, that jerseys will be returned at the end of the year. It was also like the AD before me just didn't pick up any jerseys. That wasn't good. Oh, man. So here's a whole bunch of stuff here that you can look at. This comes from our book. Policies, finances, logistics, equipment. Somebody said equipment earlier. Personnel for the coaches. Resumes from your coaches might be a good thing to get. Goodness sakes, there's a lot on here. Here's one interesting one. What about a long tournament? Let's say that you were going to go to, I think Loma Linda Academy runs a tournament at Christmas. How would you get a team from PUC to Loma Linda on Christmas break? What procedures would you need to go through? What steps? Just shout some things out that you can think of. Who's in town? Okay. Yep. So there's one. What else? Paperwork. Permission slips. So you got to, who's here? Talk to the parents. How would you travel to Loma Linda from here? Would you drive? Would you fly? Vans? So how would you get the vans? I can't hear you. Email the AD, okay, and then the AD would have to talk to who? Yeah. You talk to facilities so they can reserve the van. How would you sign up for the tournament? Depends. Depends on the tournament. Southwestern, you had to ask them a year in advance. So like I tried to take Bass, I tried to get them signed up for the email list for the next year. I was like, I'm going to start a basketball team next year, and we'd like to come to your tournament. He's like, all right, I'll put you on the list to for whenever we open enrollment for it or however they do it. And they actually had like a website, and you have to go fill out a form and put how many players or name, number, and then how many managers, how many coaches, so they could come up with places for people to stay. I'm pretty sure Loma Linda tournament, you would have to arrange where are they sleeping. So you'd have to find hotel. And then how are they going to eat? So you'd have to have every meal planned out. Which meals are you going to order pizza? Which ones are you going to go to Subway? At the Southwestern tournament, at Southwestern Adventist University, the Subway near there during basketball tournament had to be they had to add staff because there were so many teams that would go to the one Subway in the tiny little town. That would be like having a Subway at the market over here. That was like the only fast food, and there's like 30 teams that come to that tournament. So every meal, probably 10 teams are trying to go there to get food. So coming up with that kind of a plan. There's a lot of logistics that come into managing a trip that you go on. Captains. First of all, should you have captains? Tell the person next to you. Go. Okay, tell them why. Anybody need more time? All right, Thomas, what did you guys come up with? Should you have captains? Why? I had actually talked to my captain before the game how to talk to the refs. Like, just because you have permission to talk to the refs doesn't mean you can yell at them. Because all of my players think that they're like NBA players and they want to like wave their arms and make a scene. And I'm like, you're going to get a tech faster as the captain. Zach, what'd you guys come up with? Why do you have captains?
We're saying like being the leader that sometimes the coach can't make a decision. Like it's good to kind of have like a little lower, not have to go to the coach every time. And sometimes the captain can see things that the coach might not see.
I think the captain knows more about what's going on with the players than the coach does. Almost every time. What do you guys got? Why do you need captains?
They're advocates, and I feel like, especially in time when the team might get down and you're not feeling motivated, that's when the captain is supposed to step in.
Yep. How have you guys seen captains picked? Like on teams you've been on, how were your captains picked?
Seniority and how
Okay.
voted, like the team voted on them,
Okay.
or like the coach just told the team who was the captain.
Which do you guys think is better, voting or the coach picks them?
The coach. Well, it depends because I've had coaches where they just make their kid the captain.
I always hesitate on that one. They better be a darn good leader if your kid's gonna be.
Yeah. There are scenarios where it worked out well, and then there are times where it was either really good or really bad. So I've had.
Okay, I want to ask you this one. Let's take my team for example. I have 13 guys. How many captains do you think I need? 1 or 2? I've had 3 before. My last year at Lodi, I had 3 captains, and one of them didn't even start. He was the 6th man. And I did that one intentionally because I wanted to show that it wasn't just the best players were the best leaders. He was probably the best leader. He just wasn't the most talented one. So usually that's how I go. I only have 1 captain on this team because I only had 1 person really show leadership. And I have him run drills, and he's also the one that's been taking care of our practice jerseys, even though we forgot them this morning. But it was like, so what other responsibilities would you want a captain to do other than what I said? It's really nice when they're in a dorm situation like Rio, because your captain can actually go check on them in their rooms. Usually your captains end up being RAs too, I've noticed. Not all the time, but most of the time. And so you just ask your captain, how's so-and-so doing? Check on them during study hall. That kind of thing. All right, so here's what I come up with. Here's what I do. And this is totally mine.
Wait, sorry, what would you do if you didn't see any leadership potential?
I wouldn't have an official captain. I'd pick a different one every game until somebody stepped up. I've never had it happen. Most of the time, it is usually the best player. And I wasn't planning on asking my players. I used to do a lot of voting, but usually I'm just watching from day one. Who is the person that's coming to conditioning when people don't want them there? I had a guy that I had 6 people upstairs at 6 a.m. running, and this dude on the team comes up and starts shooting hoops 2 courts away by himself while his team's on 2 courts away running. I was like, okay, that person's not going to be a captain because that's pretty crummy leadership to be doing your own thing when your team's doing everything else. And that was one of my seniors, so I was like, nope, that one's not going to be a captain. Yeah. So I'm a big advocate for servant leaders as a coach and as a captain. Let's say I have the equipment manager is the captain. So when we get to a game, the persons that are carrying the balls in for the team, the person that's grabbing the books, the stats sheet, in our case an iPad, the video, our captains are carrying that in. they tend to be like, freshmen, you're our servants, you need to do it for us. And I always tell my captains, I was like, Jesus was a servant leader. He got down and he washed people's feet. Now, I'm not saying you got to be everybody's servant, but you lead by example like Jesus did. So that's why I want you to be the person that's carrying the... Now, do you have to carry them every time? No. You could ask somebody to carry them for you, but you are the one I'm holding responsible. If the team shows up to an away game and the basketballs aren't there, I'm yelling at the captain, not the freshman. So I was like, that's the person I hold accountable. We don't do this as much anymore, at least in California, because it's hard to own a bus as a school. But we used to have an away game, and usually you'd have pizza delivered to the school. And on the way home, there would be pizza on the bus. And I would have the captains carrying 3 or 4 pizzas. They'd all be cheese. And they would be the ones walking down the middle aisle there. Have some pizza, and they'd walk a couple more, and then each person, rather than having everybody come up to the front of the bus and try to get food that way. Because I wanted to get on the bus as quick as we could and get them home so they could go to sleep. And I said, I don't like freshman servants. Here's some other things. Take a couple seconds, read that, see if there's anything on there that you agree or completely disagree with there. The end of the year, you have a sports banquet. Tell me, what kind of awards did you have for your team?
Most improved, MVP, offensive player, defensive player. There was like a personal one for soccer, like Coach Ronaldo starts out like his family donates money so he picks the person that deserves it the most. Or something. That's all I can think of right now. Oh, for like the Calpac stuff.
Say, but that one you don't get picked for, or the coaches vote on that. So if like they make Calpac first team, second team, third team. So how many players are on your team?
Last year it was like, I want to say 19, 18.
So 5 awards for 19 players.
And this year is like 20.
Okay. Here's one that I had, and I'm going to let you guys decide. Our college coach at Union College, he gave an MVP award to every single player on the team. I hear some smirks there. And they all thought the exact same thing. Like, all of us were like, seriously? So, I have this little tiny MVP trophy that's like this big that he gave to every single player. And his point was that everybody is valuable. That's what he was going for, but it didn't go over that way. So, at the end of your season, you make sure you kind of have a clue. And I would ask this when you get to a new team, as what awards do I need to be watching for the year? I usually just did an MVP, a most improved, and then we called it Spirit Award, and you would take whatever your mascot was. So like here, I'd call it like the Falcons Award or the Pioneer Spirit Award or something like that. And that would be the player that usually has the most spirit on the team. And most of the time that went to a player that was on the bench that cheered the loudest. And that's the one I would let the team vote on. I would let the team vote for the Spirit Award. Most improved was always from me, because I'm the one who sees where they start and where they end. And MVP, it always ends up being the same thing. Like MVP is almost, if you let the team vote, it's going to be the same person that you would pick as the coach. So the only one I usually let the kids vote on was the Spirit Award that I would do. Do you give a different award, or do you give an award to the captains? On small teams, I didn't, but my gymnastics team had 40 people on it. And so I had 4 captains. I had 2 guys captains, 2 girls captains. And at the end of the year, I would give them, the only thing that was different is like, they usually were seniors. and we would give little senior plaques, and they would say like how many years they were on the team. I would on there as well, and I was be captain this year. So I would just have a little bit of an excerpt differently. I had a really hard time, the culture, when I got to Bass, and that's why I wore this jacket today. This was my acro team. This jacket I found just in our stuff. They had a bunch of them that had no markings, nothing on the back, and those were given to all the regular team members. The captains got the embroidery and the name on the back, and some of them even had like their name on the here. So only the captains got the special treatment. I hated that. And they wanted to have like a special uniform for just the captains. I'm like, no. I was like, I want servant leaders, not people that try to set themselves above everybody else. So I put a real hard no to that one, but that's what they all wanted when they got chosen as a captain. So we talked about the handbook a little bit. I got to get through the end of this here because we're running out of time. So this one, and here's this is for your homework, by the way. So you have your coaching thing that you have to finish up. I don't remember which one's due today. But that shouldn't, so I'm going to have you like say what parts or what stuff goes with this. So what parts do you need for about the team? What athlete guidelines would you want? What are the rules of the sport that need to be? And this I would put like things that are changing. Like this year in basketball, fouls reset every quarter. Instead of having 10 fouls for the half, it's on the fifth foul is when you start getting into the bonus. And there's only one bonus. Your technical and tactical skills, that's where I'd put like my plays, and I don't run plays, but that kind of things. And then your forms, what forms would you want to include in there? Like parental permission slips, consent to treat forms. So all those kinds of things. Hint, there's probably a chart in your book that can give you some good ideas of what you need to include there. So the instructional person, this is the coach, and we kind of gone over this already to a degree, is you want to set your goals for your team as the year. One of mine is always, I want to win more games than last year. You're going to select what kind of offense, what kind of defense you're going to have, and then kind of your season plan. I want to have this in by this date. You know, I wanted my press in by the first game, which was yesterday. And I played a team that also had a coach that had just started. They had no clue what to do with a press because it was their first game. So, like, they called 3 timeouts in the first quarter because they couldn't break the press. So I was like, that's why I was like, I want my press, and that was a goal by the first game. So, and then evaluating if that worked or not. And I've talked about the different events, competitions. Oh man,